Welcome to Policy and Governance Perspectives, the official podcast of the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University. Join Dr. David Ramadan and Schar School experts as they engage in thought-provoking conversations with elected officials, policymakers, and thought leaders. Listen for in-depth discussions on policies, politics, governance, and career pathways, all designed to elevate your perspectives and expand your mind.
Welcome to Policy and Governance Perspectives, the podcast of the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University, where we explore the people and policies shaping our nation. I am your host, Dr. David Ramadan. Today, we're taking a closer look at an often overlooked pillar of American defense and public service, the U.S. military reserves. These are men and women who balance civilian careers, education, and family life while remaining ready to serve when called. With me as my co-host today is Commander Dan Matthews, a Schar School graduate student and a Navy reservist, and our guest, Commander Sean Cake Purdy, who brings both military and private sector experience to the conversation. Together, we'll explore the value of the reserves in the modern world, what they do, why they matter, and how they continue to strengthen the connection between civilian life and national service. Commander Purdy, welcome.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Commander Matthews, my co-host and my fellow patriot at George Mason, welcome.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here as well.
Thank you. All right, so I got a story behind this cap that I'm wearing, which I'll share in a minute. But I want to start with you, Commander Purdy. Cake? Tell me about the nickname Cake.
Absolutely. So, in aviation, many aviators get call signs. I'm no exception. My original call sign was actually Pancake. When I was in my first squadron, they would always see me at Waffle Day on Sundays. And so, as they thought about what call sign they wanted to give me, they said, Waffle would be really cool, but that seems way too cool. So let's just call him Pancake instead. So my call sign became Pancake. And I have a very easygoing demeanor, but when I used to write our schedule, it was a lot of fun because I would sometimes get frustrated with last-minute inputs and things like that. So everybody would say Pancake would be my happy-go-lucky, jovial self, and Flapjack would be my alter ego. So as time went on in the squadron, people would continue to call me Pancake, and then finally Cake. By the time I was leaving the squadron, people were just calling me Cake all the time. So that's what really stuck.
Excellent. That's a great story. Thank you. All right. So I am wearing a cap of the USS Dwight Eisenhower. I had the honor and pleasure of visiting the Eisenhower when it was in Norfolk one year when I was serving in the Virginia General Assembly. I was a guest of the mini boss, and I'm going to ask you, Commander Purdy, to tell us a little bit about what a mini boss is and what does he or she do, because you were a mini boss, as I learned. And they customized for me this cap with Delegate Ramadan on it. It sits on my shelf as a reminder of that fantastic visit. I pulled it out for today in honor of the Navy. So thank you both for being with me. Let's start. Let's talk a little bit about understanding the reserves. So in addition to explaining what a mini boss is, Commander Purdy, Cake, could you tell us, please, what exactly are the reserves? How do they fit into the broader structure of the U.S. military so that our listeners, our students at the Schar School can get a better understanding? Most people don't know.
Absolutely. And so let me just start with the note that the views both myself and Commander Dan Matthews expressed today are our own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy of the Department of Defense or Department of War, Department of the Navy, the Reserves, or any other U.S. government agency. So what are the Navy Reserves? Well, the Navy Reserves is really that connective tissue that links the full-time active duty Navy to the broader American public. It's made up of men and women who choose to continue serving their country while also building civilian careers. People like Commander Matthews who pursue education and also raise families. So we often describe reservists as citizen sailors. The model is that people may work as engineers, teachers, airline pilots in many cases, doctors, or business leaders, in my case, strategy consultant, during the week, and then train and deploy alongside active duty sailors when the nation calls. Now, the reserve force supports virtually every mission area in the Navy, from aviation, surface warfare, and special operations to cyber intelligence, medicine, logistics. Reservists train to the same standards that active duty peers train to, and they can be mobilized for global missions ranging from combat operations to disaster relief. At its core, the reserves provide the Navy with scalable, ready capability. In peacetime, we sustain specialized expertise and institutional knowledge, and we can rapidly expand that force to meet the national needs. It's one of the most efficient and flexible force structures in government, one that lets the Navy project power globally without maintaining a permanently larger active duty footprint. Now, I'll stop there so I can kind of describe the mini boss piece, but I want to see if you had any questions before I do.
I have two follow-ups, but please tell us about being a mini boss.
Fantastic. So while I was, this was 2014 to 2016, I was serving on the USS Essex LHD-2, and that is an amphibious assault ship. This is not as large as a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, but it does have, at that time, AV-8B Harriers, and now F-35 Joint Strike Fighters. And so what a mini boss does is they control the entire flight deck. So as you can probably imagine, a floating airport can be an extremely complex environment. So we have to maintain control of all airspace around us and know what's coming in and going out to keep all of those aircraft safe. So that's what the Air Boss does. The Air Boss connects with strike officers who control the skies outside of a certain range. And then when they get within visual range of the tower, the Air Boss controls them. The Mini Boss controls all aspects of the flight deck. And so if you could imagine an aircraft is coming in to land, getting gas, things like that, there's a lot of logistical activity that needs to occur when that happens. As well, we train to any type of emergency that may potentially occur. And so we have aircraft crash crews standing at the ready for any potential scenario.
Thank you for that description. How does the service in the Navy Reserve differ from active duty, if any, besides the time that you spend on active duty?
That's an excellent question. And so to me, it's mostly about the focus of what you do. If you think about a reservist, a lot of the things that we do, we focus on process. An active duty member focuses on tactical level engagement because they are in it every single day. They know the systems in and out. They know the tactics in and out. The reservists, they come in, and so because they don't have access to those systems on a daily basis, those skills would atrophy over time. So if you could imagine a flying pilot, not flying very often, those skills would atrophy. So because of that, the reserves, in some ways, has kind of transitioned to focusing more at the operational level of war in the strategic realm and focused on planning and operations at that level. So how does that change? To me, you're focused on a broader skill set in a broader picture, thinking about what a commander thinks about at a 3-star or 4-star level.
Thank you. from your experience, talking about personal experience here, what strategic value do the reserve bring to the U.S. readiness and the global engagement today? I mean, we are a country. We're not going to talk about the political side of the military here at all, but we are a country that have our active duty and reservists all over the world. What is the strategic value of a reservist, and what do you bring to the U.S. readiness on a global engagement level?
So that's a fantastic question. And so right now, if you think about the strategic situation the U.S. finds itself in, this is an increasingly complex security environment with competition. We call it great power competition. And so with that great power competition across multiple domains, sea, air, land, cyber, space, the reserves can play a vital role in each of those domains and each of those environments because it can bridge readiness and resilience. Reservists, the biggest strategic element of this is that they provide surge capacity. So, meaning that the Navy can scale up for crises without maintaining that size year round. But it's not just about numbers, it's about expertise. Many of the reservists that I've met, Dan included, bring deep civilian experience in areas like artificial intelligence, cyber defense, logistics, consulting, strategy. That dual background where you can bring best of breed for both worlds allows the Navy to stay agile and adaptive in a world that changes extremely quickly. For example, in my own community in naval aviation, reservists can fill critical billets supporting carrier wing training, fleet exercises, operational planning. During major operations or humanitarian missions, reserves have integrated quite seamlessly with active units, often serving as that bridge point between the joint and coalition partners that affect that humanitarian mission. But strategically, the reserves ensures that Navy maintains global engagement, but it's sustainably manned. It's part of what keeps the U.S. military responsive, but also affordable. The reserves is a force that can scale, but it's also, in my opinion, a force that can both innovate and endure over time.
And I know you're talking about the Navy Reserve, but this mirrors the same thing with the Army Reserve and I assume the Marine has a reserve and the Air Force Reserve, correct?
That's
Yes,
correct.
they all do. Same mission for all of us, obviously focused on the specific branch we're in, but we all provide that operational and strategic reserve for the force to spin up and tackle whatever mission we have to deal with.
Excellent.
Yeah. And
So,
one of the very interesting elements of this, too, is that the reserves has changed over time. And so, because we're now focusing on this operational level of war, we can get very deep subject matter expertise where the active duty side, you come into a tour every 3 years or so, and then you change to a new tour and you do a broadening and assignment, and you think and you focus on that, and then you move on to another staff assignment or move on to your next career milestone in leadership or tactical engagement. For the reserves, we don't necessarily have that exact same path. And so you can have people across the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marine Corps, who stay in certain units for 15 to 20 years. And that level of deep expertise and deep connection with those staffs can be vital in conflict.
so speaking of the deep expertise and people that bring their experience from the civilian world into the military as reservists, Commander Matthews, one of the things that I love about our university, George Mason, and our school in particular, the Schar School of Policy and Government, is this interaction of professional students, professional professors, people of hands-on experience from the real world, having people like yourself in our graduate classes and what other students can benefit from. So before I turn this over to you as a co-host, where you can bring up some questions that we want to ask Cake about, Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit what you're doing at the Shar School, and then the floor is yours to ask some questions.
Thank you very much. So I did 12 years active duty, surface warfare officer. Was on 2 ships in LHD as well as as an ensign, getting my SWO qualifications. Went to destroyers Trano. Then I went and did some tours of the Marines. Got to go see the world in Okinawa, and then Camp Lejeune, and then I rolled to the reserves. I've been a reservist for about 5 years now. Shar School, I'm doing my degree, same one you did with global policy, focusing on global risk and strategy. It's definitely helping me. I appreciate the Shar School broadening me my understanding economics, and then especially Shar's helped me learn to speak the economic side, and the military's taught me to speak the security side. So learning those 2 languages has been a very good and broadening skill set, as Kate was talking about how we get better and some of the things the reservists can do. So
Thank you for that background. Now, what questions would you like to ask Commander Sean Purdy? Kate.
all right, Kate, what misconceptions do you think civilians or full-time service members often have about us as reservists, and how do we address them?
I think the most salient part of that question is the specific mission set that people have in the reserves. People that think, oh, you just do this part time. This is not your main job, so you have a limited focus on certain things. I think the challenge that some people might have is that it's really somewhat difficult to balance both things. To me, at least, as I think about, the reserves and my own civilian career, people often have more of a perception of military members in general than they do specific reservists. So, for instance, I think there's a misperception of people in the military that we're inherently inflexible, that we're inherently hierarchical because of our command structure. It's very, focused on the pyramid command structure. And so I would say that, being part of different organizations, certainly in consulting, where you have an extremely flat culture and the best idea wins, those are some of the, I'd say, misperception that I have faced as a reservist.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Great perspective. I wholeheartedly agree. On the other side, what's some of the most rewarding things you've had as a reservist?
So for me, the most rewarding experience have been centered around people and purpose. I've served as a commanding officer. I've served as an executive officer. And so I've had the privilege of leading sailors, including yourself, from all walks of life: pilots, maintainers, planners, information warfare professionals who volunteer their weekends, their vacation days, time away from family to continue service to their country. And seeing that commitment, to me, is incredibly inspiring. One moment specifically that stands out to me is, the idea that people that I either, decided to focus on and mentor and give up significant amounts of time, when those people promote and those people advance in their careers, that to me is so absolutely rewarding when they get to hit that next milestone, much as yourself on October 1st. I believe that those are probably the best experiences that I get to face. One thing that I really like to focus on is the mentorship aspect. I'm on the Aviation Mentoring Network in the reserves, and that connects junior officers with senior leaders for career development, personal growth. And when you get to see a young officer who comes off of active duty, who doesn't really understand the differences between active duty and the reserves, and can potentially, in some ways, get lost in the shuffle with their career, and you see them gain confidence and gain, that skill set and ability, or choose to stay in service because of the support that you've given them, that's really what makes it all worthwhile.
I agree, and I'll definitely thank you for your mentorship. I know part of how I got here is due to your leadership, so thank you, sir. So, with that, if someone wanted to join the reserves, came up to you, is like, "Hey, I want to join, but I'm not sure," what would you tell them?
No, this is a great question. So, since they're coming up to me, I'd always tell them, talk to somebody who's doing it. So if they're just coming up to me, they are talking to somebody who's doing it. Now, every reservist has a different story about why they joined and why they stay. For some, it's about continuing their military journey. Others, it's about reconnecting with service after years in the civilian world. If you're unsure, think about what draws you to service in the first place. To me, the Navy Reserves gives you an opportunity to contribute meaningfully to something bigger than yourself without giving up everything else in your life full time. You'll be challenged, but you'll also grow. You'll gain lifelong friends. You'll get mentors. You'll get experiences that are going to shape who you are. My advice, don't let uncertainty stop you. Take that first step and continue talking, continue educating yourself about the different opportunities that reserves can potentially present to you. And that's what keeps people coming back. That broader purpose. I once read an article, and it discussed the key ingredients for, and I wish I could quote the article. I tried to look for it so I could actually cite the author because I love the article. So my apologies in this academic environment for not citing my source.
We're on the
But
podcast side of academia here, so you do not need to cite your course. No APA, no APA requirement here. We're outside of the classroom.
Fantastic. It was in the Harvard Business Review, and it discussed the meaningful elements of a career, and it discussed purpose, belonging, recognition, and autonomy. And to me, at the sacrifice of some level of autonomy, you get significant purpose, you get significant belonging, and you get significant recognition. As you advance in rank, that autonomy comes to you, and then the purpose is much broader. It's not just about yourself and your own career, it's about those who you lead and inspire.
Wow. I do need that article to read, so you need to send me that link afterwards.
I will do everything I can to find it. It was back in
Thank you.
All right, so we
2017
have
or
a
18.
homework assignment. This
Don't
isn't
worry,
a
I
F5
can't help
bridge, right?
myself. That's the professor in me, right? I can't help myself. So let me ask you something. Clarify for our listeners the difference between the reserves and the National Guard. Everybody today is seeing the National Guard on TV. This is in the news. Again, we're not going to get into the politics of it, but they're not the same. So clarify the difference between the National Guard and the reserves, please.
The military reserve is the federal component of the armed forces. We report to the president and the Department of Defense, Department of War. We train part-time, but we can be mobilized for national defense, our overseas operations. The National Guard Army, Guard Army, and National Guard Air Force, they serve in a dual state and federal role. They report primarily to their state governors, but can be federalized by the president as the situation calls for. The Guard is often deployed for state emergencies, natural disasters, civil disturbances, as well as federal missions abroad. In short, the reserves is federal mission, National Guard is state and federal mission.
How do they get into the National Guard versus getting into they both have to be active duty, right? There is no active duty National Guard, or is there?
So, if you want to say someone just wants to go join the National Guard, you can do that straight. You don't have to go active duty and then go National Guard. You can go join the National Guard. You still do the basic training any service member would for that branch. You go through that. You go through your A school. And then you go to your reserve unit and do that. And then, you can tell off of active duty. Like Kate and I, we were both active duty, rolled to the reserves. Same thing. If you're Army or Air Force, you can go off active duty, join the reserves. And there is inter-service transfer, both active duty and reserve. So there are people who are one branch active duty and then will go join another branch in the reserve, whatever fits their lifestyle and their needs better. So, and the needs of the service.
Yeah, and we do have people that come in from the street, a number of times. We have people that are doctors who, just tell themselves, at 40 years old, I want to do something different. I want something more. But I don't want to give up my practice. I just want something extra. And so they come in with an amazing skill set in medicine, and then not knowing anything about the military, and then they come into the military directly through and they can do that through the Navy Reserves.
Is that limited only to specific professions as doctors or engineers, or could they be generalists as well?
So
You can,
we have a mix of everybody. Sorry, Dan, please.
yeah. No, sorry. No, you can come in, you can enlist. If you have a degree, you can become an officer, you can become a SWO. When Kate and I were at our unit together, we had a civilian join, and he was a cyber guy. He became a cyber junior officer, did his quals with us, but did his cyber job as a civilian on the outside. So,
And how much of a full-time requirement or time that they need to spend in training and all before they can then become reservists?
Kate, you want to take this one?
If you know off the top of your head, I'm going to have to
Yeah, I
research a
did.
little bit about
Uh,
it, but it's
no,
the Direct
no.
Commission Officer Program.
So it depends on what branch and what they're going into. If they're going to be enlisted, they go through the boot camp, and that varies based on service. I want to say the Navy is 8 weeks, the Marine Corps is 12, Army and Air Force, Space Force have their own lengths. Can't be a Space Force reservist right now, but the other ones, you go in, you do your boot camp, you join. Officer, you do your direct commissioned officer, you can do OCS, again, depending on the type. If you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, something like that, one of those very specialized skill sets. DCO, you go through the training. That's about 12 weeks. Get commissioned, you'll do your advanced training. Again, depending on what that is, that can be a couple weeks to a couple months. It all depends on what your MOS is, so there's no one quick, easy answer.
So for your classmates, Commander
Mhm.
Matthews, at the SHAR School,
Okay.
if they decide they finish their master's program, their MPPs or Masters in Public Administrations, MPAs, or whichever program they're in, we also have our security programs that we're known for, and intelligence masters, a Mason, and they graduate with that, and they decide to join. They come in as officers, and that could be simply 3 to 6 months of full-time engagement, and then they'll be reservists instead of being full-time.
Yeah, and it depends on what branch they want to go to. They can be officers, they can be enlisted. You don't have to be an officer if you have a degree. You just have to have a degree to become an officer. So,
And I assume they
and
would want to be because they have spent many years in undergrad and grad school, and they may want to do that as a career move.
more than likely, it'd be one of those conversations I'd have with the person, what they want, what they're looking for out of it. Both of them are honorable professions. They both serve just different roles. But yeah, probably on average, say 3 to 6 months of commissioning, and then you do your 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year minimum. But I would encourage, just like anything with the reserves, if you can do more and it works with your schedule, do it. So,
And is there an age limit for them to
will
join?
say this: there are many people, many of my sailors. Some of my sailors have had doctorate degrees. Some of my sailors have been business owners. Some of my sailors have gone to top level education across the country, and everything in between. So I would say that the reserves in general is a lot more flexible depending on what you want to do. To answer your question about the Direct Commission Officer Program, it's 5 weeks in length for Navy Reserves. I just looked it up, and for the most part, most people would want to go OCS, in the officer route based on their education. But there are many reasons why you'd want to enlist as well.
And is there an age limit? Gray-haired people like you and I now, if we were on the outside, probably could not join, correct?
it depends on what specifically. Medical, if off the top of my head, medical has the oldest age limit, but it depends on what branch you're going into and then what MOS within each branch. So there's not one flat answer to that.
Thank you. All right. Since we're talking about individual careers and perspectives and options, let's talk about that a little bit. Commander Purdy, let's go back to you. tell us about how you started and what was your trajectory in the Navy before you were full time, before you went as a reservist, and what inspired you to do that?
Absolutely. So going back to the start of my career, I read a phenomenal book by General Norman Schwarzkopf called "It Doesn't Take a Hero," and that was in high school. And so I said, I want to be a tank driver and I want to be in the Army. So I applied to West Point. My best friend's father said, if you're going to apply to West Point, you better apply to the Naval Academy and you better apply to the Air Force Academy. So I did. And lo and behold, I got into the Naval Academy, and that's where I went. And I said, well, I'll figure out how to be in the Army maybe later, because I did Army JROTC and I knew nothing about the Navy. And so while I was there, I said, wow, this flying thing looks really amazing. So I should probably try and go do that. So I put pilot as my top choice. I ended up getting it, thankfully. And then I went straight to flight school. As I was there, I just wanted to make sure that I was qualified to do anything I wanted. And I selected for helicopters. Had a great time flying helicopters on the East Coast and West Coast. And then, I one of my most rewarding parts of my career I got to do was teaching people how to fly the H-60 helicopter. Music majors, some person, one of my students is currently running for Congress. So really amazing. And so then I went to my mini boss tour. And then at that point, really that purpose, belonging, recognition, and autonomy element kind of crept up on me. And I said to myself, well, what does the rest of my career look like? And could I do something different in the civilian world and still maintain, a great career in the military? And I found that through business school. So I decided to go do that, and then transition to strategy consulting on the civilian side. And on the reserve side, I tried to my best to pick up command as quickly as I possibly could. Did that, and then transitioned to a number of different fleet staffs, where I focused on bridging the gap between information warfare, cyberspace, and the other key capabilities that the military can bring to any conflict, and hopefully prevent that conflict. Then I got into leadership and now focus on air command and control. And so that's my kind of story and where I've gone.
Are you still flying?
Only in my civilian life, not in the reserves.
Oh, awesome. We got to talk about that flying in the civilian life after the podcast because one of my dreams is to fly a helicopter.
Oh, fantastic.
Let's, you mentioned something I find interesting, preventing conflict and war as part of your role. Tell us a little more about that.
Sure. Again, I'm going to reiterate that this is my opinion and not the opinion of does not indicate, Department of Defense, War, or Navy policy. But
especially now that's called the Department of War. This is what I'm saying, not you, right? But a Department of War that prevents war. Your personal opinion, you're not speaking for the Navy.
Yeah, so if you think about it from a game theory perspective, and I was I was a math guy, and I've studied a lot of game theory. If you have an extremely strong, stick, generally speaking, if somebody knows that you are willing to use it, then they're not going to mess with whoever has that. And so part of the reason that, the US military, in my estimation, focuses so much on having that bigger stick is not only, do we find ourselves, focused on a global economy, but also we want to make sure that if and when people come knocking at our door, we're ready.
So I was at an event on Monday, and I saw somebody who I knew from my political experience and political circles in the past. He is and I got to reconnect with him. He is the former Secretary of the Navy, who, after he left the Navy, ran for office in Virginia. He's a Virginian. Didn't work out for him, the office run, but obviously his experience in the Navy was quite important and beneficial for his leadership perspectives. And this is open to either one of you, commanders. How much of that experience shapes your policy opinions? I'm not going to talk again. We're not talking politics. We're talking policy here. How much of that experience shapes your policy opinions, policy perspectives, regardless of party, regardless of politics, or apolitically?
Dave, you want to take this one?
Happy to. So in the 1600s, Britain had the world's largest empire, all the way up to, what was it, 1945? That's when they roughly started in 1600s, and then came up to 1945.
World War.
Shortly after World War II. Part of the reason that they were able to sustain that empire was because they had the world's strongest expeditionary fighting force. And so, as I think about the interconnected globe, and the $20+ trillion economy that Europe has, the $30 trillion economy that we have, the partnerships that we have, the strong expeditionary fighting force that we have, that is, truly one of the biggest reasons, in my opinion, that we have a strong and effective expeditionary fighting force. History has kind of told us that is key. It's now moving into space and cyberspace, of course, as most people know. And so from that perspective, from that historical perspective, I continuously think, what is the right makeup of the force? And is it worth it to have the expeditionary fighting force, as strong as it is? And that shapes my, philosophy in that, yes, it is. It's, we are propping up an entire global part of the economy to do so. So that's how I would answer that question.
You made me think here, and again, the open question to either one of you. We saw in recent wars happening as we speak, such as the one in the Ukraine and Russia, a total change of what are the important elements of that. And again, this is from a political science point of view, is that the tools have changed, right? Drones, AI, and those are what changed today, and how you could target individuals. I hail from Lebanon, and the war, and I grew up in a civil war. I grew up in major wars. I remember the USS New Jersey on the shores of Beirut, and when those cannons were firing, the whole city would shake. Yet what we just saw in Israel and in southern Lebanon and other places today are drones that can target the driver of a car without even obliterating the full car, or the entire vehicle. Again, in your personal opinion, you're not speaking for the Navy or the Department of War. How are those tools changing in the naval space?
So I'll take this unless you want to, Kate. War, I'm very much, I'm going to quote Clausewitz here. War, at the end of the day, is a violent contest of wills between states. Excuse me. And as you said, the tools are changing. The tools have always been changing. It's how we use them together. The Navy, obviously, over the last century plus, again, more lethal, longer range, longer communications, and we're adapting our training. We're adapting how we train, where we deploy. Logistics is always going to be important. the nature of war never changes. The character of war does change, and we have to adapt, but we also have to be careful that we're not trying to over adapt too fast and get strong in one area and weaken ourselves in another area. It's always that careful balance against the different parts of military readiness and making sure we're there. We're making sure we're paying attention and learning about what is new out there, how to integrate it with what we have. And again, I need to reiterate, these are my personal opinions, not in any way represent the Navy, the Department of Defense, Department of War, or the U.S. government in any way. But yeah, the Navy's becoming more lethal, longer range, faster ships, better weapons, more precise weapons. But again, it's how we use them and how we integrate them as a whole force.
Yeah, this is this is part of my main job, and a lot of people ask questions about this specific piece. It's that, all of these high fidelity systems, how long is it going to take to replace, the F-16 or, the Joint Strike Fighter or other, key capabilities that we have. And I often, think to myself that those are very large programs. And while you have a number of different elements that are changing, some of the basics are staying the same because those are low fidelity capabilities versus the high fidelity capability we have. Now, what's changing is the need that we have with both. We need high fidelity systems. We need low fidelity systems. To me, thinking about the specific pieces, because you talked about AI, you talked about autonomous systems, you talked about, technology. So why don't I unpack that? So to me, AI is changing warfare from reactive to predictive. And so it allows commanders to anticipate threats, to process information at a machine's speed, and then make faster and more informed decisions at the speed of what we call the speed of relevance. Cyber is kind of the new high ground today. Wars today are not just fought with ships, aircraft, and now contested space, but it's also in with code. And so defending networks, disrupting adversaries before a shot is fired, is, a critical component potentially in, a future conflict. We talked about autonomous systems. So they're redefining what I would say is presence and persistence. And so what that would do is uncrewed vessels, aircraft, undersea vessels or vehicles, excuse me, they extend our reach. They extend the time on station. They operate in riskier environments, and they free humans for more complex decision making that we're pretty much built to do. And so, a couple of other pieces. To me, technology is accelerating the pace of conflict, but human judgment remains part of the decisive picture for conflict. And so machines can process data, as we all know, and it can process it very fast. But strategy, certainly ethics, and accountability really stay with us. I think the Navy's integration of AI, cyber, autonomy, it's not really about replacing sailors. It's about amplifying them to me. Those smart tools can make a much smarter force. Think about, your chat GPTs of the world or, all of those things. People often say that AI is not going to replace you, but someone who knows how to use AI will replace you. And that's kind of how I think about the modern day sailor. Modern day sailors need to be smart, need to be effective, need to be mission focused and oriented. And that's how we get to the next level.
Fascinating. And you brought up we're running up on time. I can stay here for another 2 hours talking about these issues with both of you. It's truly fascinating for me, and I'm sure our listeners, Mason Nation, are going to enjoy it. I want to bring it back from where you talked about ethics and accountability, and let's relate it back to our context of universities and education. Cake, you went to a top graduate school. Dan and I are proud at our top master's programs from George Mason, specifically from the Schar School. Where do you connect the dots? And where, if you were given a magic wand and asked, what would you want from the Schar School of Policy and Government today to be an accessible and an advantage and a supporter of the modern Navy? What would you want from our students? And we're not a naval school, so we're not going to teach it in the military side. I'm talking about the educational side, the critical thinking side, and keeping it within ethics and accountability or similar issues. Open to both of you.
And I'll let you take that one first. It's your alum. It's your school.
Yeah. So, and some of it I see, and one thing I'm very happy about with Shar, the diversity of thought I see in the read. I see a pretty good range of readings, and I would just reinforce that and do more. The more viewpoints you see, and especially from different countries, different time periods, different disciplines, really going into that and forcing you to engage with these, think critically about these, how understand other people's theories of mind, how they see the world, what their background assumptions are. And I found that so much, one of my undergrads was philosophy, always taught to define your terms. And I see that a lot of times people are coming from very different terms when they're talking about something. And I know I've had arguments where we've been going on, and I realize an hour later, oh, we're using this word completely differently. So making sure those are there. And then, as I said, I've done a security side for a long time. Shar's helped me round out my economic side and seeing the different perspectives there, and really understanding, hey, we have our silos of excellence. It's interconnecting those, understanding you have an information specialty, you have a science, you have economics, you have math, you have drama, you have poli-sci, you have security. You need to be able to talk across each other and communicate with each other, and that makes us stronger in the end.
Different altogether is our tagline at George Mason. Commander Purdy, overall, what would you want to see and continue, or already see, or continue to see, or different from the academic world in support of our modern military today?
Yeah. So when you look at schools like the Schar School at George Mason, you're really focused on where technology, policy, and ethics kind of intersect. I think that's where the military's headed. And so, we talked about AI, we talked about cyber, we talked about autonomous systems and how they're changing how we fight. But, I kind of talked about how we need to think about the accountability, the human judgment side. And so for the Navy Reserve, the kind of education that, schools can bring to us and that dialogue can be very critical. So we operate, at the highest level, or we can operate at the highest levels of warfare. And so I think the seam is really between the civilian innovation and the military application. And so my understanding about this question, I think understanding the ethical implications of new technologies, new technology application, it's not necessarily academic, it's operational for us, but it starts in the classroom. And so I think that understanding how we can make sure that we use these tools responsibly is, probably keeps, people like you, at the center of the mission.
Service, leadership, purpose. I was taking notes, commanders. Ethics, accountability, fascinating discussions. Values that obviously define the men and women of the U.S. military reserves. reminds us of serving one's country doesn't always mean wearing a uniform full time, but being ready to step up when called. My sincere thanks to both of you, Commander Dan Matthews, my fellow patriot at George Mason at the Schar School of Government, Policy and Government, and Commander Sean Cake Purdy for sharing your experiences and insights. Your stories reflect what makes the Reserve Force such a vital part of our nation and our national strength. The seamless link between civilian expertise and military readiness. I certainly learned from both of you today. I hope our listeners, I know for a fact our listeners and our viewers at the Schar School are also going to learn from your experiences. And I look forward to continuous conversation. I am David Ramadan, and this has been the Policy and Governance Perspectives. Until next time, stay engaged and stay informed.
That brings us to the end of another insightful episode of Policy and Governance Perspectives. We truly appreciate you joining us for these important discussions featuring voices from across the Schar School. For more information and to explore our archive of past episodes, please visit schar.gmu.edu/podcast. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to sharing more with you next time.